would you accept that social democratic parties in too many European countries became seen as sort of the haves rather than the have-nots, became the establishment, and that in a certain sense their job was done, if you look at the historic mission in terms of working hours?
I don't think that's the explanation for why social democracy has not done so well. In some European countries they've done quite well. In my own, I left the party had more than 26% of the vote. That's pretty good. Some member states is actually going quite well, and I think the key to that is twofold. First of all, we did actually have a good hand when it came to dealing with the economic crisis. When I was in government, we brought Denmark out of the economic crisis without losing what I think is the most important to many people, the fairness of society. The fact that if you work hard, you get a chance, and if you somehow need the welfare state to help you, the welfare state is there to help you. So we didn't lose the fabric of solidarity in our society coming out of the economic crisis, and I think that is very, very important. The other thing which is important is that if you're not a party that gives sufficient answers to this, to the new immigration issues, to all discussions about multiculturalism, if you don't give sufficient answers and quite clear answers to that, you are going to lose out. So I think that the parties that have done well, the social democratic parties that have done well in solving those two things, they will continue to do well. So it's not only about the economy, it's also the parties that have understood that it's about culture and nation and community. They have done well and will do well in the future as well.
Does that mean, though, in the Danish case, for example, a social democratic party fighting on more of what we would think of as a right-wing platform? I noticed you mentioned solidarity, culture, integration, of course, is another word that gets used in the Danish context, that people have to integrate and they have to reach quite a high...
Yeah, I mean, I ran on an agenda asking people very clearly, if you live in Denmark, you have to work, you have to integrate, you have to learn the language of this country. Of course, you can have whatever religion that you choose, but we have to have some kind of togetherness in this country, which means that there has to be a common ground of language and certain parts of our culture, and the fact that many people that you have to work. I think those are the things, if you say them very clearly, it makes sense to most people, and we managed to do that in a way where we never ever discussed people's color of skin or the ethnicity or their religious background, where we did it respectfully, but also very clearly saying that if we're living together in a community, there has to be a certain degree of integration for all of us to fit into that community.
And that doesn't stop you being of the left?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that is of the left, because
pandering to
I don't think the left should give up stuff like being patriotic, accepting that community means a lot to a lot of people. Safety, security in your community means a lot to a lot of people. And if the left stop talking about that, we're handing that agenda to the right-wing parties, and I don't think we should be doing that. So security is very important in all aspects of that word. That's internal security, but also external borders, and also trying to deal with immigration in a way so society feel they can cope and do that in a way where everyone contributes to the community. We were never scared of talking about that. If you come to Denmark, you have certain rights, and everyone shares equal rights, of course, but it also comes with certain obligations. So I think the rights and obligations discussion is extremely important also for the left-wing or the centre-left parties.
I think social democrats in Denmark have been unashamed about making those arguments for quite a long time. But do you think that in a lot of other European countries there's a sort of squeamishness about, on the left or centre-left, about adopting those positions because they feel it's allowing the right to dictate the agenda on culture? Or... Yeah,
I think particularly when you talk about rights and obligations for every citizen that comes to a new community or a new country, there has been a hesitation to go into that discussion, and I never quite understood why. I mean, social democracy was also always about having rights, but also fulfilling your obligations to your community or your country. So I don't think that should scare us off. So I always wondered why that was so difficult. And with that comes, of course, the discussion about integration. It is not too much to ask that if anyone comes to live in a new country, that they make an attempt to learn the language of that country, that they follow some of the norms, that they work in that country. I don't think that's a right-wing point of view. I think it's a patriotic point of view, and it's also a point of view that will make sure that new people come into a country, that they get a fair chance. Get a fair chance in the education system, in the job market, and get a fair chance to give new opportunities to their children as well.
When you look at the way these elections are shaping up on the platform, and you see the attempts to coordinate between Lega in Italy, the AfD, the National Front in France, do you see that as a coming together of a coherent threat?
They're very good, these different forces, of avoiding talking about their differences. And there are a number of differences between these different parties in the different member European countries. But what they're very good at right now is to join up and forget about those differences. And that's why I'm saying that we have to be very careful in this European election. I think that the right-wing, anti-establishment, anti-system parties, they're perhaps the best organized political force in Europe right now.
And if they are a large and somehow coherent presence, does that effectively put the brake on further integration, on block the EU in certain budgetary aspects? Or do you think ultimately still member states will rule the roost in that respect?
Well, I mean, European Union is very clever in that way. So member states have a lot to say in the European Union, and nothing can be decided if member states don't agree ultimately. And then you have the European Parliament. So it's always a mixture of these issues. But what I am seeing is that European Union is basically the biggest humanitarian actor in the world. We are the region where we actually try to balance the market economy and try to have a market economy which is fair. European Union is where we try to uphold the Convention on Human Rights, for example, and is the best region at doing that. What I'm worried about is that all those things where the European Union really stands out compared to the rest of the world, that will be diminished if we have these right-wing parties which are working against all those things where the European Union is playing a very active role on the global scene.
I'm obviously getting the message from you pretty clearly that you don't think social democracy as a concept is kind of out for the count, or long-term the decline will just continue until it ebbs away into single figures or whatever. But what do you think now are the keys in terms of platform to convincing people, the struggling people in economies, that you aren't a party of the establishment, of the sort of Schroeder-Blair haves rather than the have-nots, that you can answer the needs across the whole of the population?
I'm not sure your analysis is right. I don't think that was what's wrong with what went wrong in terms of social democracy in Europe. I think it was both. It was a mixture of the answers that we had to immigration issues and certain answers in terms of the economic changes that happened, particularly after the financial crisis. Some of the parties did well because they could answer those two issues. My own party is one of them. Some of the parties didn't do so well. So I think that is where it changed. What I think is that many Europeans ask us to solve the issues that they are concerned about. That might be our external borders, immigration issues, the economy, which is still something we need to sort out, global warming, and security issues. And if we are able to solve those issues with other parties in the European Union, I still think there is a role for social democracy, because I still think there is a need and an urge, actually, for a party or a coalition of parties who are trying to work out how can we have a globalized economy, which is not something we can choose or not choose, but how can we make sure that that globalized economy is actually working for people, working in a fair way to make sure that everyone gains from globalization. And I think that is where progressive parties still have a very strong role to play.